Voldemort's plans are simple, easy, and never have giant plot holes that if the thing existed, his plan would completely fail. Oh, no. I'm not talking, that's not Voldemort. Voldemort likes to have plans that are overly complicated, and one little detail that could be changed would completely ruin all of his plans. And one of those details is in Deathly Hallows with his plan to take down the Minister, because in that same book, we are introduced to a piece of magic that could have stopped it all if the Ministry had used it. Easy enough. But why are we introducing a piece of magic that could stop him, but not actually use it? So before we go over his plan, if you like Harry Potter content and, are interested in this theory, welcome. Make sure to like, subscribe, and I'm doing more theories. If you're here because of my book reviews that I have been doing, awesome. I'm going to be doing other book reviews, but I also mainly do Harry Potter content. So let's get right into it. My lord, I have good news on that score. I have, with difficulty, and after great effort, succeeded in placing an imperious curse upon Pious Thickness. Many of those sitting around Yaxley looked impressed. His neighbor, Dolohov, a man with a long, twisted face, clapped him on the back. "It is a start," said Voldemort, "but Thickness is only one man. Scrimjaw must be surrounded by our people before I act. One failed attempt on the Minister's life will set me back a long way." "Yes, my lord, this is true. But as head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, Thickness has regular contact not only with the Minister himself, but also with the heads of all of the other Ministry departments. It will, I think, be easy, now that we have such a high-ranking official under our control, to subjugate the others, and then they can all work together to bring Scrimgeour down, as long as our friend Thickness is not discovered before he has converted the rest," said Voldemort. Alright, makes sense, right? Imperious all of the heads of all of the departments of the Ministry of Magic, and when they're all in a meeting together, have them just take down the Minister of Magic, who is a trained Auror and, probably used to being attacked. That's fine. We'll push past that. We'll also push through the fact that people can break through the Imperious Curse, but we only know of two. Those were both introduced in the Goblet of Fire, and one of them is Harry, who has an excuse of why he can break through. But the other one is Barty Crouch Jr., which is pretty easy. Barty Crouch Sr. was extremely stressed and probably not focused on making sure he had full control over his Imperious Curse. With Bertha Jorkins missing and knowing some of his darkest secrets, the Triwizard Tournament, and also the Quidditch World Cup, all happening at the same time. Yeah, he's a little less focused on making sure he was taking control of his son in his weird slavery situation. But the Ministry has precautions to take care of all of this Imperious and Polyjuice Potion conundrums, because the Ministry sent out a pamphlet. Number 4, agree on security questions with close friends and family so as to detect Death Eaters masquerading as others by use of the Polyjuice Potion. See page 2. Number 5, should you feel that a family member, colleague, friend, or neighbor is acting in a strange manner, contact the Magical Law Enforcement Squad at once. They may have been put under the Imperious Curse. See page 4. So, the Ministry is trained to deal with the Imperious Curse and even Polyjuice Potion, which we'll get to that, but they are trained to detect people under the Imperious Curse. I know, a good Imperious Curse you won't notice, but even Barty Crouch Jr. talks about look in their eyes. You can see in their eyes when they're under the Imperious Curse, but say you can't. Wouldn't you think the Magical Law Enforcement, who are specifically trained to combat the Imperious Curse, would notice when their boss, the head of the Magical Law Enforcement Squad, is under the Imperious Curse? Say somehow nobody noticed, cool. But there's a piece of magic that is introduced in the same book as Deathly Hallows that wouldn't have required security questions and would easily prevent intruders from getting into the ministry, whether it be through Polyjuice Potion or Imperious Curse. This not only would have prevented the Death Eaters from infiltrating the ministry, but it would have also prevented the Golden Trio from sneaking into the ministry under the guise of Polyjuice. And weirdly enough, there's a small change that kind of bypasses this problem that they did in the movies. And I don't think they did it on purpose. I don't think they even thought about this when they made the movie. But yeah, the fact that it happens in the same book is weird to me, because it's not like it's forgotten magic that, hey, we learned about this in like the first book, but by the seventh book, it's like, oh yeah, no, what is that? I'm talking about the Thief's Downfall, which not only washes away Polyjuice Potion, but dispels the Imperious Curse. They were deeper than Harry had ever penetrated within Gringotts. They took a hairpin bend at speed and saw ahead of them, with seconds to spare, a waterfall pounding over the track. Harry heard Griphook shout, "No!" But there was no braking. They zoomed through it. Water filled Harry's eyes and mouth. He could not see or breathe. Then, with an awful lurch, the cart flipped over, and they were all thrown out of it. Harry heard the cart smash into pieces against the passage wall, heard Hermione shriek something, and felt himself glide back towards the ground as though weightless, landing painlessly on the rocky passage floor. "The cushioning charm," Hermione sputtered as Ron pulled her to her feet, but to Harry's horror, he saw that she was no longer Bellatrix. Instead, she stood there in overlarge robes, sopping wet and completely herself. Ron was red-haired and beardless again. They were realizing it as they looked at each other, feeling their own faces. "The thief's downfall," said Griphook, clambering to his feet and looking back at the deluge on the tracks, which Harry now knew had been more than water. "It washes away all enchantments, all magical concealment. They know there are impostors in Gringotts. They have set off defenses against us." Harry saw Hermione checking that she still had the beaded bag and hurriedly thrust his own hand under his jacket to make sure he had not lost the invisibility. Then he turned to see Bogrod shaking his head in bewilderment. The thief's downfall seemed to have lifted the Imperious Curse. So, first off, we have this magic that gets rid of Polyjuice Potion, gets rid of the Imperious Curse, even gets rid of transfiguration on yourself. So, why is it not used in the Ministry? And even if they hadn't used it at first in the Ministry, why didn't Voldemort use it? I mean, they were forcing workers to go through the toilets. "Morning, Reg," called another wizard in navy blue robes, as he let himself into a cubicle by inserting his golden token into a slot in the door. "Bloomin' pain in the bum this, eh? Forcing us all to get to work this way. Who are they expecting to turn up? Harry Potter?" The wizard roared with laughter at his own wit. Ron gave a forced chuckle. "Yeah," he said. "Stupid, isn't it?" And he and Harry let themselves into adjoining cubicles. To Harry's left and right came the sound of flushing. He crouched down and peered through the gap at the bottom of the cubicle, just in time to see a pair of booted feet climbing into the toilet next door. He looked left and saw Ron blinking at him. "We have to flush ourselves in," he whispered. "Looks like it," Harry whispered back. His voice came out deep and gravelly. Okay, but the thing is, it wasn't even used that way. You could have filled the toilets with the Thief's Downfall. I assume stepping in it, you don't maybe have to get covered in it, but stepping in it would probably break most enchantments. So why was it not used? Easy. Goblins. It's goblin magic. Goblins hate wizards. And why would the goblins give wizards magic that would benefit the wizards? Because the goblins don't care about the wizards. They're like, no, we want to protect our stuff from your magic. We're not giving this to you to be able to protect your stuff from other wizards. No, we don't trust you. You'll probably somehow figure out how to use this against us. So if that is out, what about the security questions? Because, the Ministry is pushing the security questions. So this must be a foolproof method that the Ministry is like, hey, look, we don't need any sort of special dispelling from Imperius, which they did. But even Harry and Dumbledore are questioning this practice. Sir, I got a Ministry of Magic leaflet by Owl about security measures we should all take against the Death Eaters. Yes, I received one myself, said Dumbledore, still smiling. Did you find it useful? Not really. No, I thought not. You have not asked me, for instance, what is my favorite flavor of jam, to check that I am indeed Professor Dumbledore and not an imposter. I didn't. Harry began, not entirely sure whether he was being reprimanded or not. For future reference, Harry, it is raspberry. Although, of course, if I were a Death Eater, I would have been sure to research my own jam preferences before impersonating myself. So let me know in the comments, do you think the fact that the Ministry wasn't using the Thief's Downfall, was it a plot hole? Like, would that have thrown an entire wrench into the plans of Voldemort taking over the Ministry? Would Voldemort have taken over the Ministry if he had used it? Let me know. But the small little inadvertent bypass that the movies had done to get past this even being a problem is they just made Pious Thickness a Death Eater, which was probably just them being lazy and not having to explain the plan, but it worked. So that's it. Stay marvelous, Knox.